I am part of a demographic that many people think by default will be supportive of executions, the death penalty. Here's a bit of my story. I was attending a church convention July 30th of 1997 in Denver, Colorado. It was the very last night of our convention, and I had been involved in workshops and worship services and all sorts of convention-type things, including eating, for a whole week. And finally, the last night came for us, and my friends and I did what we always did on the last night of a big convention. Went out partying. We went to a downtown hotel and had a big ballroom and live music, and we were dancing. We were dancing and dancing the night away, celebrating having had a wonderful convention there in Denver. And there I was in the middle of the dance floor. It wasn't that I was so good that I went in the middle of the floor, because I wasn't good. And that's why I stayed in the middle of the dance floor, that people wouldn't see me as I made my moves, if you can call them that. But there I was, grooving to the music of En Vogue and other groups of that era, having a good time with my friends and strangers who were there in the bar room also. When all of a sudden someone tapped me on my shoulder, said, "You have a phone message." This was before cell phones. So someone said, "Come and take this call down the corridor going to the kitchen area." So I said, sure. I was smiling and said, "I'll see you all in a few minutes. I'll be right back." And I was bobbing down to the hallway to get the phone message, and the music of En Vogue kept bidding in one ear, and I had the phone to the other ear. And that ear with the phone received terrible news that would change my life and the direction of my family forever. For that telephone message informed me that Jennifer Ann McCoy, my baby sister, as I called her, age 21, had been shot to death in her home in Cleveland, Ohio, with her then 2-year-old daughter, Imani, in the house. I was stunned as I was escorted back to the ballroom where the dancing had been taking place. But all of a sudden, there was no music. Somehow, word had reached the people on the dance floor that something horrific had happened in my family. And somehow, I attribute this to God. A dance floor was transformed into a sanctuary. And people began to reach out to me, and they touched me or put their arms out toward me, and they prayed for me, hugged me, and sent me away from Denver, going back east to be with my family, knowing that they loved me and I was not going by myself. So the next morning, I made my way to the airport and I flew home. Home for me then was Detroit, Michigan. And I had to make my way from Denver to Detroit and then Detroit to Cleveland. While on the plane for those 4 or 5 hours, all I could think about was Jennifer, my baby sister, 21 years of age. Her life taken just when she was discovering who she really was and what she was really about. She had made a few mistakes in life, but we all had, everybody had. And she was overcoming those mistakes and was well on her way to a vibrant and happy future when, on the night of July 30th, someone entered her home with a gun, a powerful gun. He seemingly held her down and executed her in her home. And all I could think about was Jennifer on the way home on that plane. My sister's gone. So I got to Detroit. Family and I packed up the car and we drove the 2.5-hour drive or so from Detroit to Cleveland. Once in Cleveland, I huddled with family there, my older sister, Reverend Teresa, and my grandfather. And we began to grieve together. We grieved together. And in the midst of that grief, we had work to do. So my sister and I made some errands, ran some errands. We went to the funeral home, where I would go to view Jennifer's body before the professionals began to work on her body. And what I saw, I could never unsee. For I saw firsthand what a bullet does to the body. And I wish, even now, I could unsee what I saw, but I could not. My baby sister, Jennifer, gone, shot to death. I couldn't stay there, though. The next stop was going to visit the Cleveland Police Department and the detectives who had been assigned to the case. And they were professional, they were kind. But that's when I realized, in talking with those detectives, that Jennifer's murder was not the worst of the worst. It was not the worst of the worst. I didn't see her picture on the wall. There was no team of people assembled to go and find her killers. No organized approach beyond those two detectives to go out and find Jennifer's killers. Well, we left the detectives and we had to plan a funeral. So my sister, who's ordained clergy, she and I worked together and planned the funeral service for Jennifer. And then we began to talk about the issues of what we do next, issues of life, issues of restoration of our family, issues of forward movement for our families. After all, we had questions. Who would take care of little Imani, Jennifer's daughter? Who would pay for her food? Who would pay for her diapers? Who would pay for the therapy that she would need? Who would even take her into their homes? And for that family who would do that, who would assist with the mortgage, the insurance, the tuition, all of the needs that people have when their loved ones have been murdered? We had to attend to those questions and more. Who would pay for the funeral service? Jennifer had no insurance. She was 21. Many people who are 21 don't have life insurance. And for good reason, because they think they have their whole life ahead of them. And we thought she'd have her whole life ahead of her. But she did not, thanks to someone with a gun. Well, fortunately, my grandfather just wrote a check and paid for the funeral expenses. But the other questions persisted. Ultimately, my family in Detroit, we took little Imani in with us and moved back to Detroit and then points west. But the questions were still there. What about her tuition? What about her therapy? What about her food? What about her clothing? What about the mortgage? What about the insurance? All of those questions and more had to be answered because they were part of the forward movement of my family after having sustained a horrific tragedy. Oh, there were people who entered the picture from time to time and who wondered if maybe we should feel angry enough to plot some type of revenge for Jennifer's murder, some type of retaliation. Or if the person were caught, the person who killed her, what would we do? We want that person to die at the hands of the state. Those questions came our way, and yet, I believe by the grace of God, we never entertained them. We looked back temporarily that we could move forward. We didn't look back to stay there in the quicksand of anger, the quicksand of retribution, the quicksand of retaliation, the quicksand of revenge. We didn't stay there because we knew staying there would impede our progress of becoming a family that was restored and able to move forward. We wanted to move forward. Well, I mentioned that demographic people think ought to support the death penalty. That would mean we would be people who would be stuck in the quicksands of anger to the point where we could not see a way forward. And we refused to make that move, to be stuck in anger, stuck in revenge, stuck in retaliation. We had things to do. We wanted to move forward. But remember also, I saw how death looks when I saw Jennifer's body. And that forever changed me. And so in contemplating what people were suggesting to me that we ought to be thinking about death for the people who did this, after reflecting on what I saw at the funeral home of Jennifer's body and knowing the pain that we were going through as a family, I resolved that I would never want anybody to experience the agony and the despair and the pain that we felt as a family knowing that Jennifer had been murdered. I would not want anybody, even the people who hurt us and angered us the most, to go through that kind of pain of knowing that someone has held their loved one down and executed them. Wasn't God's will. People would say everything happened for a reason. Well, yeah, because of injustice. That's the reason, not because of God's will. People were believing that it's okay to hold somebody down and execute them if that somebody who does the holding down is the state. And we rejected that. It wasn't because we were perfect as a family. We were not. But we had faith. We kept the faith. And the faith kept us moving forward and not focusing on death, but focusing on life. Life of Lily Mine, life of our family. Remembering and honoring Jennifer through moving forward and not committing to the vicious cycle of death that claimed her life, as carried out, though, by the state. Well, I moved on. We all moved on. Years passed, and Imani grew and kept growing, and I met people later on in my journey who had gone through some of the same kinds of things I had gone through, who had lost their loved ones to murder. And yet these people resisted the societal pressure to be trapped in the quicksand of anger and retaliation. And they were grasping a hold of life the best they could. These people included the late Bill Pelkey, co-founder of Journey of Hope, and so many other members of Journey of Hope, from violence to healing, people who have lost loved ones to murder, who helped me to say along with them to the state that would have us grasping for revenge, retaliation, to say to the state, sometimes with tears in our eyes and wobbly knees, these words: don't kill for me. Don't kill for me. Don't kill in my name. And I would learn the importance of saying to the state that if you want to honor the life of my loved one, take the $16 million in Ohio that had been spent on the matrix and the machinery of executions from 1997 to just about 2 years ago. Take that $16 million and invest that in the lives of murder victim families who have those questions I raised earlier. Who will pay the mortgage? Who will pay the tuition? Who will pay for the diapers? Who will buy the food? Who will pay for the therapy? All those costs and more. Take that $16 million spent on the matrix and the machinery of death in Ohio and Georgia and invest those in victim families. That would be money well spent. Help those families to receive restoration, because the death penalty is only a hollow instrument of death that offers no redemption, no wholeness, no restoration, and no closure. There's never closure for us. Every time I look at little Imani, who is not little anymore, but 28, beautiful, has her own little boy. When I see them, I smile, yet I remember her mother, my sister Jennifer, and I will always remember her. And I'll smile as I do, but I'll also wonder about what she could have become if someone had not made a decision to end her life. I don't want the state to make a decision to end anybody's life, and especially in my name, in the name of my family, in the name of anybody of goodwill who aspires toward a future without death that's imposed purposefully, execution style, by anybody on the streets or in the prisons as authorized by the state. Well, something else Journey of Hope taught me that Bill embodied so very well, and all the members of Journey of Hope embody so very well. When confronted with these complex issues like capital punishment, the restoration of families, dealing with violence in our society, people who've hurt us and angered us the most, our motto has been and remains, the answer is love and compassion for all of humanity. Love and compassion for all of humanity, even for the people who have hurt us and angered us the most. We refuse to be on the hamster wheel going around and around for revenge and retaliation and retribution and paying people back, repaying evil for evil. Homicide, to show that homicide is wrong itself. So I'm so glad that you invited us to be here tonight. Journey of Hope, from violence to healing. It really is about hope, about moving forward, about ending state-sponsored death and investing in life as punctuated by love and compassion for all of humanity. Thank you very much.